think Drake should have known going into this that he was going to be biting off a little more than he could chew.
I think if a jury's sitting there listening to this and they hear the sequence of events that led to this, yeah, I absolutely think that's going to impact things.
But like, I can't go toe-to-toe with him lyrically. I'm not that kind of artist. I have other people writing songs for me.
Drake files this lawsuit, not against Kendrick Lamar, right? Very important, against the record label.
Against the label.
Over the Not Like Us hit song. And we've been following this because initially where he started, he filed something in New York and he filed this petition being like, I just want to do discovery. I think that Universal's been juicing the numbers. This song was not as popular as they're all saying it is. And so that was initially his mission. And then he changed courses. And then he filed this lawsuit for defamation against Universal. Now, what's happened procedurally is that there was a complaint, a motion to dismiss, right? So Universal came back and said, Your Honor, I want the whole thing kicked out because this is just hyperbole. This is extreme exaggeration. Everyone knows these are diss tracks. No one's taking it seriously. He's not defamed. It was an interesting argument. But what Drake did in response is he amended his complaint. And I actually, this morning, I was going through this. You know, it's over 100 pages. And the way that his attorneys are now revising the allegations, they go, well, all these bad things happened. Like people came onto Drake's property, opened fire, his security guard got shot. I mean, lots of bad things have happened as a result of this song, allegedly. And Universal has been fanning the flame. And so that's why they should be liable. But in the amendments, there's a couple of things they pointed to. They go, well, number one, there's a wider market now. It's not just the fans who know this is a diss track kind of thing. Now it's these people who saw it through the Super Bowl and the Grammys, right? All the non-fans that have been exposed to him being a Pedialyte, right? And so there's that issue of just exposure, but they also added all this language. They're like, Universal dominates over 200 geographic markets. It's a big boy. I've been saying this. I think it's a monopoly at this point. But what they did is they added pages and pages of public comments. And I really want your thoughts on this because they went and scrubbed the internet. They're going to YouTube videos and Instagram, and they're finding people's public comments. And they are now taking the position, we're not just saying there was defamation, we're going to prove it because there's just hundreds and thousands of comments of people saying this stuff. They believe that he is a Pedialyte. And so, you know, in the realm of this is what you do, man, are you quite the target by design a little bit, right? For kind of what you do, you have a huge audience and there's just a lot of eyes on you. And so with that's going to come some negative reactions. So, you know, how much weight can we give to these comments being like, he needs to go to jail, the FBI needs to come and take him away. So how much weight can we give to public comment?
I could sort of see both sides of it. And I've commented on this, you know, before. I mean, one side of me does personally feel that like there are a lot of issues today when it comes to the interpretation or understanding of rap lyrics and the context of court cases and so on and so forth. The recent Young Thug trial certainly is like an example of that. I don't personally feel like these songs should be kind of like given the seriousness and gravity of, I don't know, the way that you would interpret or take like maybe a news article, for example, or something like that in a defamation case, just to kind of like bring a point of comparison here. But simultaneously, the idea that everything Kendrick said in his songs to Drake were just over the top hyperbole and were not said with his chest, to sort of like, you know, put it in a colloquial phrase there, also to me feels kind of like a lie, you know, like he said what he said. And he meant what he said about the guy. And, you know, as far as like defamation cases are concerned, there's no precedent or sort of like legal rule of thumb to go by that essentially says like, oh, well, we have to take things when they're rap lyrics in a certain context, maybe give it a bit more leeway in terms of like saying certain harmful things about people. You know, when you say a thing, if it's recorded and it's documented, in a lot of these cases, it doesn't really matter, in fact, at least from what I understand, the context in which you say or communicate this thing, the medium, you've communicated it and it's gotten out there to the world and people have consumed it and people have either agreed with it or they don't and so on and so forth. I mean, you know, regardless of the way in which these words were said, and they were in the context of a song, there are people who take them very seriously. And, you know, feel like these allegations that are being made, and you could argue at the very least, that they are allegations that are being made by Kendrick against Drake. People take them as if they're not just allegations, like they are just statements, pure statements of fact. And, you know, I do think that Drake has, how necessary this will be to his case, I guess we're going to see. But I do feel like Drake at least has an argument in terms of like, these things were said about me in this song, and there's actually like quantifiable, notable damage, I suppose you could say, if you want to frame it that way, that is being done in terms of like the way people perceive me now. People perceive me in a certain way due to the release of this song. Now,
But how much is just people being mean online? People are gonna hate. I'd love to see an expert get up and try to explain the culture of the online commenting.
well, not only that, but I feel like that argument that I've just kind of thrown out there doesn't necessarily hold up as good when you bring in the fuller context of the beef too, because as far as the Pedialyte topic goes in this beef, it's Drake who originally goaded Kendrick into bringing it up as a topic. You know, Drake is the one in his original responses to Drake lyrically in, you know, songs like, well, I mean, like that was kind of the shot across the bow, but, you know, Euphoria, so on and so forth. This was not brought up. This was not an accusation leveled against Drake. It was in the tailor-made freestyle that Drake did to Kendrick with the AI vocals and so on and so forth, where he brought up that topic and sort of teased him into, yeah, why don't you say that about Drake? I heard it about on the Joe Budden podcast and so on and so forth. So, I mean, you know, there is potential here that Kendrick wouldn't have even addressed it or brought it up as a topic had Drake not like literally opened up the door to be like, well, here it is, you know, like come and take it. You know, he essentially dared him to do the thing that he's now sort of like crying and complaining about. Even Universal brings that up in their response to his lawyers. I don't know how, and maybe you can kind of speak to this. I don't know how, I mean, obviously, I think that's an argument that has a lot of sway in the public opinion, in the court of public opinion. But as far as like, you know, in your experience and from your point of view, as far as like court cases go along defamation lines, how effective or significant of an argument is that? You know, like, can somebody essentially say, okay, well, this person has said a very harmful thing about me that's destroyed my reputation. And it's like, okay, well, the thing is, you also kind of dared this person to say that thing about you. You know, you said, well, you know, I dare you to get on your platform and say all these horrible things about me. And then you went and did it. You know, does in the context of a defamation case, does that argument even sort of matter?
I think counsel for Universal should have a chat with you, because I really like the way you put that on he dared me to. Now, they are essentially saying that. They go, this was a back and forth. Drake was goading Kendrick, right? So he essentially brought this on himself. But I like
they were
the way
both mutually engaged in it.
Yeah, and so it's the unclean hands argument, right? So are you really going to be like, you know, I'm just lonely over here and you just said these terrible things and I'm so defamed? It's more context, though. It goes into consideration of everything, right? I think if a jury's sitting there listening to this and they hear the sequence of events that led to this, yeah, I absolutely think that's going to impact things. But, you know, this from the amended complaint that I was looking at today, what they also added is that Kendrick implies he has more information. They're arguing that this is such a big piece because it's like not just what I'm inferring or what I actually said, but I'm saying that I actually have information, which is making it believable to fans and non-fans. And so what they're trying to do is really to bolster this, because right now they're just trying to survive this motion to dismiss. As you know, if Universal is successful, this whole thing gets kicked out. So this is a big point.
Yeah,
in
they're seeking a dismissal as of right now.
That's right. And, you know, my initial thought to the first motion to dismiss was that I go, it's a good argument, but here's the thing. The court has to look at the four corners of the complaint and be like, is there a viable claim here? Could this be a legitimate claim? Could they win on this? And I go, a broad sweeping, the court's not going to come back and just say, no, there's been no harm, because it was a diss track.
Right.
There probably has been harm.
I mean,
right?
a diss track and the #1 song in the country, performed at the Super Bowl, multiple Grammys. Like everybody has heard this song.
If you're needing legal help with your career, your business, we got you covered. Feel free to reach out to my law firm. I'm honored to say we have over 100 5-star Google reviews. We offer free case evaluations, which just means that you can give us a call, you can email us, no commitment. We'll just see how we can help. We look forward to hearing from you. Well, and then you'd mentioned this, you go about the publication piece, and I wanted to clarify. So publication is an element to the defamation claim. And so you go, was there a publication? It doesn't have to actually be public. Here's the thing. If someone says something real bad that is false about you privately, that's actionable too as defamation, because that can be just as damaging. Right. So in any case, you know, I'm going to take a look at the new motion to dismiss. But I don't know. At this point, do you feel sympathetic to Drake? Because, you know, at this point, he also has now, as you put it, the court of public opinion, in that this still doesn't really look good for him. Like the longer he continues to kind of go with this, I feel like it's just not going great for him publicly. But what do you think?
I mean, as of right now, no, I don't feel particularly bad for Drake. You know, I will say, I don't think he did anything necessarily to initially warrant Kendrick sort of doing that like that track and sort of like, you know, poo-poo the idea of him and Cole and Kendrick together being like, yeah, the big three of hip hop and so on and so forth. I mean, I've said numerous times, Kendrick was like a little out of left field, like aggressive with that approach. But I mean, I think historically he has a bit of a chip on his shoulder in terms of what he sees artistically as like his superiority over a lot of his contemporaries. I think Drake should have known going into this that he was going to be biting off a little more than he could chew. It's not nice. It's listen, if I was in his position, I certainly would not have had an easy time of, you know, deciding like, okay, this guy dropped this track about me. He's kind of hating on me. He's disrespecting me. But like, I can't go toe to toe with him lyrically. I'm not that kind of artist. I have other people writing songs for me. On top of that, he's kind of relentless, you know, and I feel like my fans and his fans both perceive us in certain ways. Even if I did sort of like outdo him lyrically on some level, he's always going to perceived as that guy who's like a better rapper than me. And in the midst of this, like there are so many crazy allegations about me, you know, true or untrue, that are floating around the internet. There is a potential for all of that to just come bubbling up in the midst of all of this, you know, because you know, as you're kind of beefing with each other, especially with artists who are as like high profile as Kendrick and Drake and have had such long histories in the public eye, where there's been so much information, again, true or untrue, logged about both of them, like all of that's going to become ammunition, you know? And as a guy who is a rapper, but also I think very much in many ways a pop artist, I think it would have made sense. And again, it wouldn't have been easy for Drake to just kind of be like, you know what, I'm just going to continue doing my thing as I always have. And that's just making hits, making my money, doing my cute little collabs, and screw what this guy says, you know, like, because as good and as talented as he is, he's never going to have that sort of commercial viability that I have. And that's my selling point. That's my strength. That's what I do. I feel like he should have just done better about kind of like realizing what he could be getting into. And maybe in retrospect, if he could have had the chance to do it all over again, he would have just avoided the bullet, you know, and maybe just saved himself a lot of headaches.